Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, ufreile, begashmis v'ruchlis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. This is the month of Chodesh Iyar, as we mentioned before. Iyar, Aleph, Yud, Yud, Reish, is Rosh Tevis, Ani, Hashem, Nefecha, that Hashem brings healing. So this is what we have to focus on and talk about. Physical healing, physical health, spiritual health, which includes also mental health. First, we'll start with tzedakah, as we spoke about many times. Tzedakah mekarev segula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach. Mashiach should come now. But the Alter Rebbe also says something very interesting about tzedakah, that kol shelish bad nafshe, just like when it comes to physical health, money is not an issue. You give it all away to become healthy. So too, to become healthy spiritually through charity, we could atone and cleanse our souls. So you shouldn't be thinking about limiting how much you give. You give it all away for physical health. So too concerning spiritual health. We're going to say a verse from Tillim, which we say every day in the Halukas. Acharei l'shvurei lev. That's the prayer. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds. So we have to go in Hashem's ways. We should be healers, and then Hashem will heal each of us and will heal the entire world. Okay, in this week's Parsha, this week is Shabbos Parshas Acharei Mois Kedoshim. So both parshas have many mitzvahs. Kedoshim has very, very many that are connected to well-known mitzvahs ben Adam l'Chaveri. We're going to focus on one of them, which is a very, very famous pasuk, and we're going to see, and this is something, an idea which I love very, very much, when we speak about the definition of being magnanimous and selfless and morals and ethics and good. We have what the Jewish view is, the Jewish perspective. And in this week's Parsha, we'll see it in such a demonstrative manner. Also, with this pasuk, I believe we could have the answer to the secret of Chabad activism. So what pasuk am I talking about? The pasuk says, "L'seilich rochel ba'amecha." You shall not, this is capital Yotes, pasuk Tes Zayin, you shall not go about gossiping among your people. Lo yisamid al dam reyecho. You shall not stand over the blood of your friend. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. So, firstly, just in general, it's well known. A lot of commentators talk about the justification in the beginning of the verse to the end of the verse. That in the beginning of the verse it says, you shall not go about gossiping. And then it says you shouldn't stand by when you see someone's life is in danger, someone's about to lose his life. You're not allowed to stand by. We'll elaborate that soon, but what's the connection between these two things? Saving a life, as they say in English, it's a matter of life and death. So what's the connection between not being a gossiper and a matter of life and death? So there's many, many commentators speak about it. One word, which is a famous word, is that it just shows you how one thing could lead to the next. Gossip could lead to murder, danger, violence. Sometimes you say something and you could cause a whole domino effects that could lead in the end to, God forbid, loss of life. That's one famous word. There's another word, and the Baal HaTurim brings it down on the spot, that you're not allowed to gossip, which includes speaking bad about somebody else. But there is an exception. When we're talking about somebody who is a person who is a quarrelsome person, brings divisiveness and strife, and actually might have an evil intent on harming another person, even to the degree of committing murder, so then you could speak about that person in order to save, to make sure that it doesn't come to a situation of dam reyecha, so then you're allowed to be seilach rachel. Then it's not talking about in such a case. In other words, that's what the Baal HaTurim learns from the pasuk. Lo yiseilach rachel ba'amecha. True, but you should remember that in a case, you should never come to a Lei Samed Al Dam Reyecha, so then you're allowed to. Anyways. Now, first, the basis of what I'm saying today is based on a Rashi Sicha. It's a Chelik Lamed Beis, I think. And the Rebbe over there talks on the Rashi of Lei Samed Al Dam Reyecha. And Rashi says, Lireis b'misosei, to view his death, when you are able to save him, Kigoin, for instance, Teveh Benor, one who was drowning in the river, V'chaya, Oilistim Boim Olav, or if an animal or bandits are coming upon him. So the Rebbe asks, why is Rashi bringing these examples over here? In general, why is the Torah teaching us this idea of Lisam del Dam Reyecha? We know from other places that you're not allowed to murder a person, you have to save a person's life. We learn out from other psukim. I don't want to get into it now. There's a pasuk that says, "V'katzesas kappa loisachas einecha," talking about if one person is chasing another person to kill them. There's a roidif and a nirdaf. What's the chiddush over here? So basically, I'm going to speak more the drush, the morals and the chassidus that we take out of it. The purpose of these shiurim is to talk chassidus. But first I'll begin with the Rashi, what the Rebbe says, and then I'm going to bring out a bit of a complexity over here. And that is the Rebbe's learning pshat, that the pasuk over here in general is not teaching us the concept that you have to save someone else's life, but the pasuk is teaching us to what degree, how far do you have to go to save another person's life. That's the chiddush over here. And the Rebbe actually learns pshat, and he makes a diuk why in another place where this is brought down in the Gemara, it says, for example, when you see somebody drowning in the river, Oi, there's a chaya, Oi listim b'im olav. And Rashi doesn't say Oi, that it's one of three things that are happening. It's two out of the three things that are happening, the two out of the dangerous situation. You think it's dangerous, but wait, there's more, it's even more dangerous. And that's the chiddush, and this I want to bring out a paradox. According to halacha, actual law, you're not allowed to put yourself in a danger to risk your life in order to save another person's life. But on the other hand, you are meant to push yourself if you for sure could save that person's life, then you're meant to do it. Even if it involves danger, but it's not dangerous to your life. Even if it involves great difficulties and great exertion. And it will be very hard. And that's the chiddush of the pasuk. That even though we say on the one hand, you're not allowed to put yourself into definite danger in order to save somebody else, but we see clearly that the Gemara does say that. It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Ayin Gimel Omer Aleph. It says clearly, Menayin l'reyes chaveri sheteveh benor oichayev geirartoi oilistim boyin olav shechayev latziloi. How do we know that if we see somebody who's drowning in the river, or an animal is already dragging him along, or bandits he's being attacked by bandits? Which, by the way, one of the things that I see from the Gemara, which is amazing, that it doesn't just say chayev boyin olav. Means he sees an animal that's running towards him. So if you have a rifle, you can shoot it. But I'm just saying, from the Gemara's language, it's even more. It's like the animal is dragging that person. He's being dragged by the animal. But in any case, so in other words, what Rashi is bringing out from the Gemara, that even though, according to halacha, your life comes first, but still, you have to push yourself to the furthest possibility, even when it's going to be very dangerous, but it's not really a matter of life and death for your part. We can call it dangerous. People have gone into dangerous situations. Danger doesn't always necessarily mean a matter of life and death. Now I'm going to go, we're going to speak about other issues connected with it, but first I want to get to the Rebbe's emphasis, and then we'll add other things. The Rebbe, in the end of the Sikha, translates it to mean more in spiritual terms, when a person's life is in danger spiritually. But before that, a general point that the Rebbe says over here and the emphasis on Rashi is that liros va'atu yochel atziloi, liros b'misosei. You see a person about to lose his life, in danger of losing his life. And the Rebbe learns pshat, why was it liros b'misosei? Why did they wish to make that you should see it? Because va'atu yochel atziloi. That's a sign that you can help him. You know what? Maybe you can't dive into it yourself. Use your phone, call somebody, do whatever you can. This hashgacha prat is divine providence. The fact that this situation, that you were the one that saw what's going on, that means you can save this world. You can save the person. And that's the main message of Rashi, and that's the main message the Rebbe takes from the Vot over here, is that if divine providence brought it, and everything is divine providence, and nothing that the Rebbe does is for nothing, and everything is ultimately to bring out his glory, that means the very mere fact that you saw it, that itself is a sign of empowerment. Why were you the one that saw it? Because God is sending you a message, and the message is, you could save that person. And that's, by the way, the main point of the halacha is at yochel atziloi. If you see a person drowning, and you see him being attacked by an animal, or you're seeing him being attacked by bandits, so even though it's like a dangerous situation, but you know that you could save him, that's the very key point. The fact is, you know you could save him. You could scare away the bandits, you can cause a diversion, whatever the story is. So you could ignore the situation, and life would be easier for you, so to speak. Or you could get involved, but you know that you will succeed. That's very important, according to Rashi. In other words, you know, in the case where you know that you could save him, then you're obligated to save him, regardless of the obstacles that are involved. That's the message of the Sikha. And then the Rebbe gets into the spiritual things. But before we get to that, I want to just bring out a couple of side points that's very interesting over here. First of all, there's a concept called a chassid shaita, a pious fool or a zealous fool. So it's very, very interesting. The Gemara in Soita talks about what is a chassid shaita. What does it mean to be a chassid shaita? This is what the Gemara says in Soita Daf Chof Aleph Amud Beis, which we just learned now. That's the meaning of Chabad, is to learn Saita. So it's an unbelievable connection. That's one of the reasons why I decided to speak about it, because it's in the Gemara that we're learning today. And then there's a Tosfos that adds to it, but it's the same idea. What does the Gemara say? Hey chadami chasid shaita. What is the case of a foolish, zealous person? A foolish chassid. And the Gemara says, Kigoin, the Kotovi, it's a benara. For example, a woman is drowning in the river. And he's going to say, it's not right for me, it's an improper conduct for me to gaze at her and save her, because she's dressed immodestly. She's in swimming gear, let's say, or maybe even less. And then he allows for her to drown. So he's worried about his piousness. And meanwhile, that person's losing their life. That's called the chassid shaita. He's considering, he's being motivated by his holiness, and this causes him in the end to cause that a person should lose his life. Now we look into Tosfos on the words Heichi Dami Chassid Shaita. Who is a Chassid Shaita? Yerushalmi. And the Yerushalmi says, Rotinik Mevabeh Benar. If you see a child drowning in a river, he's wearing tefillin. He says, you know what, I'm going to deal with my tefillin. I'm going to put away my tefillin properly, and then I'm going to save him. By the time you took off your tefillin and you wrapped your tefillin, that person drowned. That kid drowned. That's a chassid shaita. So he's busy with his tefillin, and he's worried about the respect for his tefillin, and meanwhile, that person is losing his life. So this is the same message over here. Not only when we're talking about physical life, but also spiritual life. This applies very, very much. Sometimes a person could think he's all abstract, theological, high level from the spiritual elite, and he can't get involved in something which will mean a descent. He'll have to get down and dirty. He'll deal with an animal. He'll deal with mud. He'll deal with bandits. He'll deal with getting, etc. We say, no, don't be a chassid shaita. Put your spiritual elitism, put your spiritual ascending on the spiritual ladder of success, and save the other person's life. Okay, now there's another point going back to the Rebbe's message, which is not in the pasuk literally, but what the Rebbe said: because you saw it, therefore that's proof that you have to do it. This is connected with a very, very famous verse. The Rebbe doesn't bring it in the Sikha, but I was thinking about it because the Rebbe spoke about it many times, and it's mamish famous. Everyone knows this. This is the story of the Megillas Esther. Esther Malka, Esther is the queen, and Mordechai tells her that she's going to have to go to the queen, even though it's very dangerous because you don't go to the king unless the king calls you, etc., etc. See there, I just want to get to the main verse. And Mordechai tells Esther, Kiim hachrish tachalishu, beis hazois, keis hazois. If you're going to be silent at this moment, revach vatzolo yamay la Yehudim mimokem acher, relief and deliverance and salvation will come to the Jews from another place. Va'at uveis ovich tevedu, you and your father's house will perish. And then Mordechai said, Umi yodeyam leis kizois higat lemalchus. And who knows, perhaps for this reason you were put into this position of royalty, for just such an emergency, for just such a position, such a situation, such a crisis. So these words, Umi yodeyam leis kizois higat lemalchus, that applies to every single one of us. For every single time that we see something where your intervention is warranted. Leis kazois. Why did you see it? As the Rebbe explains this Rashi. Why was it that you saw what's going on? Because you're meant to be the responder. It's like we speak always about first responders. The beauty of the message of first responders, let's say Atzola, is because it's a matter of time. It could be a matter of life and death. And by you being the first responder, you save the day. You save the person. You save the life. You're in a position that you could be the first responder. And these words ring forever, and it's a call to all of us. In everything that we see or notice where there's a situation where you could bring benefit. So you have to remember, for this reason you were put into this position, that you saw it, because you're meant to be the one that's going to save the day. And the Rebbe, in this Sikha and L'Kutei Sichos is taken from a Bilti Muga, from Pashas Kedoshim, Tafshin Mem Vav. Look over there, there's a couple of pages in the Bilti Muga, where the Rebbe immediately translates it to Shluchim, and to Shlichus. And this is what I meant when I said before, that this is in a way an aspect of Chabad Lubavitch activism. And the whole idea is that we have to be the ones, because it's a matter of life and death. And there are many fellow Jews that are drowning in the anxiety, drowning in tension, drowning in situations of spiritual death, God forbid. And we are the first responders all over the world, and we're living with this idea of we can't stand by and watch the way this person is becoming alienated and disconnected and further away from his heritage, away from his true soul. And there's many levels, as we're speaking about today. There's one level where every Jew is connected, so if he's disconnected, there's a disconnect in me. Number one. Number two, by the way, in this verse, that says Va'atu beis avich tevedon, that the salvation will come from somewhere else, but you will perish. And then there's two messages here. One message is the fact that you were shown this thing, you're in this position, you're in this unique position. Like, for example, you're the only one that has contacts that no one else has. You're the only one that has a connection to certain Jews that no one else has. Because you have unique connections, you have to connect with those connections and bring them spiritual benefit, a matter of life and death. So that's number one. But the other message is another idea, which is you're not doing anyone a favor. Hashem will find another way. The question is, will you have the merit for your benefit to be the one that does the right thing? That's another emphasis from this pasuk. And there's a famous story. This past Sunday was the Rebbe Menashe's birthday, the 4th Lubavitcher Rebbe, and actually there's a famous story. It starts with it's brought down in the writings of Friedrich Rebbe that there was a certain situation that the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, told the Friedrich Rebbe when he was younger to do some kind of mission, and he came back and he told his father, I took care of it, I did them a favor, etc. And then the Rebbe Rashab said, you didn't do them a favor, you did yourself a favor. And then he told him, the Rebbe Rashab told him a story that happened with his father, the Rebbe Marash. And it was Tafresh Mem. I think the English year might be 1840. And there was a lot of anti-Semitism raging in the country. And the Rebbe Rashab went to Petersburg, and he met with very, enlightened, secular, so to speak, Jews, wealthy. And he told them that he'd like to make a delegation where he will go with them to some high officials, ministers, and discuss the anti-Semitism and what they could do about it. So one of the wealthy people who was like secular, non-observant, he stood up and he said, what do you think? You think we're blocks of wood to be played like pawns in a chess game? In other words, he felt that, generally speaking, the Rebbe did not really discuss matters with these wealthy, secular Jews, etc., etc. The Rebbe is a Rebbe. He lives in Lubavitch, in a village. He's involved with his Chassidim. He's involved with the world on his level. He's not, reckoning with them in questions of leadership and guidance to the Jewish nation. So they knew that the rabbis, so to speak, don't really consider their opinion the perspectives of secular Jews concerning Judaism, of course. So therefore, this wealthy secular person said, now you're coming to us because you want to make a delegation to go speak to ministers. So I'm not the one to explain the Rebbe Marash's methods and tactics, but yes, maybe if he wanted to make a delegation, he wanted to bring a sample, so to speak, delegation, which represents the large community, all Jews, not only religious Jews, just that all the Jews have an issue with anti-Semitism. So that's why I imagine he wanted to engage also those that were from different groups, different factors, different elements of the Jewish population. But this person was offended. He's offended. Now you come to us. Generally, you have nothing to do with us. So the Rebbe Manash answered him. This is what the Rebbe Rashab told the Friedrich Rebbe, a story that happened with the Friedrich Rebbe's grandfather, that he answered them with this pasuk, which was Revach Vatzole Yamed LiYehudim Mimokem Acher Ve'atu Beis Ovich Tevedon. He told them the verse from the Megillah. He said, if you will stand up now and take a position and voice your opposition and displeasure and dissatisfaction with the situation of the anti-Semitism against the Jews, then it'll be good for you. And if not, salvation, Hashem will find another way. Hashem always saves the Jewish people sooner or later. But the question is if you will have a merit to be part of it. And if not, I'm not sure, don't put me on record, but I think that Rabbi Marash ended, if not, V'atu beisavich yevedu, tevedu, which doesn't necessarily mean physically, even though sometimes it means physically. Because once you have the governments that start with anti-Semitism, they don't distinguish between the observant Jew and the non-observant Jew. They kill Jews. But definitely it means spiritually. The more the person becomes alienated, he becomes cut off spiritually on very many levels from his roots, from who he truly is. So again, this pasuk teaches us Leisam del Damreyecho, and there's two aspects to it right from this pasuk. Number one, take a stand. Because you saw it, that means you could do it. That's the Rebbe's emphasis. And number two, it's for your benefit. Because if God showed you this, that means you're meant to do it. And by doing this, you'll bring yourself benefit and blessings to no end. Okay, one general point that still has to be said. I'm not going to elaborate now because it's a whole different subject I mentioned at the beginning of the shir today. Over here, just it's another example. I find this a fascinating subject to talk about ethics and morality, communal obligations, charity, social justice. It's just a fascinating subject to think about what the definition of good is without the Torah and what the definition of good is with the Torah. People have no idea, those that don't study Torah, about our view and our perspectives. Like, for example, I'm just going from one thing to the next, but really there's no time now. Like, for example, let's say the people right now on the social medias are talking about how Judaism inherently, in a certain sense, is racist for the rest of society. Because since we're chosen, we look down at everybody else. And I feel like telling my friend, no matter how much you respect your people, Gentiles, we respect them more. And I'll tell you simply, mathematically, scientifically. You know why? Because I'm asking you a simple question. Do you believe that that person has a spark of God in him? No? So then your respect is limited. But if as a Jew, the Torah says that Adam was created with Salmeinu Kidmei Seino, he was created in the image of God. My friend, I respect every human being to no end. Because we're meant to, because we see the spark of God in every single human being. And therefore, in a certain sense, by respecting the human being, you're respecting God. Yes, Jews have a different mission for whatever reason. But it doesn't take away by one iota about how we look at the rest of society. We don't look down at the rest of society. God forbid, on the contrary. And not only on the contrary, we look at them more than you. Now, the same thing is very important. Let's say we talk about a definition of good. If you go over to the average person and you say, what is good? So most people, when they say, what do you believe in? Similar to what it says in the Gemara, what you don't like, done to you, don't do to another person. Or they're going to say the famous words, live and let live. So according to Judaism, that's good. That's not good at all. You could be the most horrible, disgusting, evil, cruel person if you live by live and let live. Proof positive, this pasuk. And this brings us to a famous concept. I don't know if I ever spoke about it before, but you can look it up. There's something in the world called bystander syndrome, I think it's called. It's based on a story that happened in the mid-60s. Someone was murdered in New York City in front of an apartment building, and the person was crying for help, and the people just peeked out of their windshield, and they ignored the cries and the screams. I don't even know if they called the police. And there's a concept, it's called bystander syndrome. People look at a dangerous situation, or they think it's dangerous, they won't get involved. And here we see the Torah view is, if you don't, you're evil. You just transgressed a deraisa. And this is for example, let's go back to the definition of good. Good doesn't mean live and let live. Good means do good. You have to be an active do-gooder to be considered good. And that is the definition of good. And this is in all the psukim of Mishpatim where it talks about different mitzvahs. Ozav taziv imoy. In Kesef Talve. It's about being a do-gooder, do good. Vasisa hayosher v'atoiv. You have to do good to be considered good. It's a very especially important this year. We're saying the kapitel Heitiv latoivim. Begin to understand what means good. Look in the mirror. Are you a good person? If you're a person that's looking to do good, then you're a good person. As to bring about the ultimate example, it says about Avram Avinu, he's considered the ultimate example, the sterling example, the prime example, the ultimate example, the absolute example of chesed, kindness. And what's the story? He had a circumcision, and he was in pain in the worst day of the post-surgery, so to speak, of his circumcision. And Hashem had mercy on him to send him angels to be guests so he could activate his do-gooder trait. I.e., he was in more pain by the fact that he didn't have guests than the pain of a surgery. Hashem had mercy on him and sent him guests so he should be able to feel good, alleviate the pain that he wasn't able to activate his kindness. So what does it mean good? Vasisa yoshav atev, number one, do good. And then there's tev atev leitiv. That's who you are. You wake up in the morning, you're thinking, how can I do a favor? You're seeking out to help others. My mother used to say, Besser sein von the Geber wie den Emmer. Always be from the givers instead of the takers. You're a person who you feel that this is your sense of a mission to bring benefit to others. At the very least, don't stand by. That's exactly bystander. Don't be a bystander. And to what degree? We learn out from this Rashi. By the way, there's a joke that I just thought of right now. It's a famous joke. I don't know if I ever said it before, so I'll say it now quickly. There was once a Jew that was driving down Highway 66, and he sees a car on the side of the road that the front is open, steam is coming out of it, and there's a guy over there standing by his car, and he's wearing a yarmulke. So the Jew stops his car, he goes over to the other car. When he goes over to the other car, he asks him, what's the problem? And this and that, and he helps the person. But while he's helping that other person, he notices that he's wearing a cross. So first he's silent for a second, but after he helps him, he asks him, can I ask you a question? It's very odd. You're wearing a cross and you're carrying a yarmulke. So the guy goes, oh, you mean this covering on my head? My mother always told me that if I should always carry this on me, have in my glove compartment, that in case I ever get stuck on the highway, I should put it on my head, and it's guaranteed that somebody will stop and help me. It's a way to make a joke, because it also brings out the truth about who we are. We're ready to always help. Go out of your way. So they should take a help. That we should live with this in the Chodesh Iyar. Bring healing. Be a healer. Be a benefactor. Be a good influencer, like it says in Ma'ayin Tovim. And if we do our thing and constantly are do-gooders, then the Eibishter will do the same thing. Hitiva Hashem l'toivim, to bring us the ultimate toiv, b'gula mitzvah shlema, take it from Yad Mamish.